All right, let's talk about a really harsh reality in business. You can have the most brilliant, entirely market disrupting idea in the world, but if you can't actually build it, well, it's really just a daydream. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking the mechanics of strategy implementation. We're going to look at exactly how you can take those ambitious, high-level blueprints and turn them into a tangible, measurable reality.
So let's dive right in and address a frustration that pretty much everyone in business has felt. We all know organizations that pour endless hours and, frankly, a ton of money into the strategic planning process, only to watch those beautiful, heavily researched plans just gather dust on a shelf, right? Why does this happen? What exactly is the disconnect between having a great plan and actually seeing a successful outcome?
Well, those disconnected plans usually end up in what we can call the strategy graveyard. And looking at our sources, a lack of ownership is actually the number one culprit here. Think about it. If nobody has a specific stake in the plan, everyone just defaults back to their daily routine. Throw in poor communication, where your team has no idea how they contribute, or a manager is getting totally bogged down in the day-to-day, or, and this is a big one, creating a massive, overwhelming plan with way too many goals. Any of those will cause your strategy to collapse. Sometimes companies literally ignore implementation altogether because they mistakenly think handing over a 100-page Planet document was the finish line. No way. That's a one-way ticket to the strategy graveyard.
Part 1, From Planning to Action. To escape that graveyard, we really have to nail down the fundamental difference between formulation and implementation. Formulating a strategy is merely setting the intention, right? It addresses the what and the why of our actions. Implementation, on the other hand, is the demanding, boots-on-the-ground phase where we actually figure out the logistics. It addresses the who, the where, the when, and the how. Obviously, both are absolutely necessary, but execution is what gives a business its true competitive edge.
Let's look at how this builds across the whole strategic management process. Everything kicks off with step 1. Defining your overarching mission. This is the ultimate destination that your entire organization is striving toward.
Next up is step 2, situation analysis. This is where we step back and examine the internal and external environment to ground that mission in reality. We absolutely have to understand our current climate, our available resources, and our competition before we make a single move. Only after we understand that situation do we move to step 3, strategy formulation. This is where we create the actual blueprint for our goals, deciding what specific approaches are going to help us navigate the environment and achieve that primary mission.
And that brings us to the most time-consuming, demanding, and frankly, the most critical part of the whole process. Step 4, implementation. This is where we convert that strategic blueprint into tangible action. It requires directing organizational change, allocating your resources, and getting every single person on your team fully aligned.
Part 2, essential elements of execution. You just cannot build a house on a weak foundation. Just like a physical blueprint needs a reliable crew and quality materials, your strategic plan needs 5 crucial elements to survive contact with reality. You need people with the right skills and genuine buy-in. You need dedicated resources that account for the true costs, both time and money. You need a clear organizational structure with open communication. You have to have systems in place to actually track progress using tools and milestones. And finally, a culture that authentically rewards strategic success and connects your employees to the bigger picture. Part 3, 6 steps to success. Okay, so how do we put one foot in front of the other? A great way to visualize this is through the Asana framework. For executing a plan, this framework brilliantly illustrates the exact sequence you need to follow to make sure your strategy actually works in the real world. Let's walk through these steps together. Here is your execution roadmap. First, you have to clearly communicate your goals. Then, you engage your team to drive real accountability. Only after those 2 steps do you actually execute the plan by allocating those key resources we just talked about. But it doesn't stop there. As you move forward, you have to stay agile so you can pivot when unforeseen things pop up. Then, you get official closure on completed tasks. And finally, you conduct a retrospective to reflect on the whole strategy and uncover lessons for the next time around. Part 4, the Walmart pandemic pivot. To show you just how incredibly effective this framework and those foundational elements really are, let's look at a massive real-world application. When COVID-19 cases first started appearing in the US back in early 2020, Walmart didn't just freeze up. They utilized agile implementation steps immediately. They adjusted their operational structures to follow CDC guidelines and protect their people. And at the exact same time, they aggressively secured resources by strengthening their supply chain to meet some huge, unprecedented shifts in what consumers were buying.
The payoff of that rapid implementation was absolutely massive. Because they clearly communicated goals, engaged their massive team, and stayed incredibly agile, Walmart saw a staggering 460% growth in average daily downloads for their grocery app by April 2020. They became the leading downloaded shopping app. I mean, that is the raw power of execution in a dynamic, unpredictable environment.
Part 5. Staying on track with control.
Now, as that Walmart example shows us, implementation is not a straight, predictable line. It's a dynamic loop. Looking back at our strategic process, right after implementation, we enter step 5, the control phase. Strategic control systems are absolutely mandatory if you want to measure your actual performance against your planned standards. If the market shifts, or if you find out resources are being wasted, this phase is what allows you to spot the variance and adapt. Without tracking your progress through honest feedback and regular status updates, even the very best execution will eventually drift off course. You have got to empower your team to use tools like critical path methods or balanced scorecards to take corrective measures on the fly. This feedback loop, it's literally the bridge that keeps your intended reality aligned with what's actually happening on the ground. I love this quote from former GE CEO Jack Welch because it captures our entire journey today perfectly. He said, "In reality, strategy is actually very straightforward. You pick a general direction and implement like hell." It hits the nail on the head. The core takeaway from all our sources today is that a beautifully bound planning document means absolutely nothing if you don't have the people, the resources, and the agile roadmap to actually pull it off. Execution trumps endless planning every single time. So I'm going to leave you with a bit of a challenge. Think about the biggest, most expensive strategic plan sitting in your office right now. Is it destined for the strategy graveyard, or do you finally have the people, the resources, and the agility to implement like hell? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.